So hello everybody, my name is Michael. I'm responsible partner manager for Central Eastern Europe in Juniper. Today, as you can see, we're talking about the Juniper X-factor. So what I want to outline to you is actually the benefit of working with Juniper, or at least you should judge on your own if there is any benefit to work with us. We have, let's say, an initiative that we call the HiqhIQ networks. The HiqhIQ networks is something that applies to all the customers that we are serving. Basically, we're serving from SP to enterprise, a wide range of customers from the smallest to the biggest. And all of them, sooner or later, will need something that we call today the HiqhIQ network. And what I want to discuss today is not only the HiqhIQ network, but basically the foundation of it. The foundation of the HiqhIQ network should be parts of SDN, parts of NFV, all comprised by virtualization and security. So in the end, now after, I don't know, 30 years of IT industry, it all comes together. It's all being virtualized. And how to manage that and how to work with these virtualization parts is the topic of the presentation today. So I'm not only talking about Juniper. I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of the industry, why the industry is moving in a certain direction, or actually in different kinds of direction, and what's the background of it. Is it the vendors driving the industry? Is it the customers driving it? Is it whomever? So this is also what I want to a little bit outline for you to better understand why those SDN, NFV, and all the other acronyms are being used at the moment, and why the same as you have heard 5, 6, 7 years ago about cloud computing, which is now more or less reality after a lot of years, why SDN and NFV will also short or mid-term become reality, if you want it or not. I think there is no escape. So basically, we have 3 parts that we're discussing today. It's the overview of the data center and service provider challenges that currently we see around the world. It's also about network and virtualization, the full, let's say, to the full extent, from servers over storage, networking to security. And last but not least, what you should be looking at if you look at today's network and what you should be evaluating when you actually try to extend, expand, or build a new network. There are a few things that I suggest to look at, or I suggest to consider, which I assume you anyway know, but sometimes some hints might not be wrong. So for the first part, the service provider challenges that you see today, as you can see over the last periods of years, the service providers grow bigger and bigger, which means that the biggest service providers like T-Systems, for example, or AT&T, Verizon, Rostelecom, whomever, Vodafone, they are growing because they are acquiring, which means they are acquiring smaller companies or smaller service providers in different regions around the world. Even in CEE, you see that Deutsche Telekom, for example, is acquiring a lot of companies in Hungary as well as in Romania, and others as well. And why they are doing this and what's the challenge about acquiring other companies is certainly they have different kinds of technologies which those companies are using. So how to bring those technologies together to deliver a service to the customers or to the subscribers. That's one of the biggest challenges. And that's why today there is something that we call, for example, NFV and SDN. But let's go back to the challenges that they are facing. So there are a lot of challenges, not only on the technology side, but also on the money side, let's say. So basically it all comes down to the commercial aspect, which is the margin. So it's the margin that the service providers are looking at and how to improve it. And why are they doing this? It's very simple, because if you look at the slide and if you compare the operating profit that the service provider is doing today on an average, it's a single-digit margin. If you look at the operating profit of the bigger ones, like Google or similar companies, then you can see there's a big gap between these operating profits that they are, let's say, working with. And certainly the service providers want to be on the other side of the profit, so meaning double-digit margins. That's what they are aiming for. And how to achieve that is their biggest task, and that's why they are pushing for certain technologies to be able to optimize their operations and at the same time their margins. So what does it mean? What they are pushing for is a simple network, a network that is simple to configure and to change. On top of that, certainly they are looking at, let's say, open standards. So they don't want to be bound to a specific vendor. They want to use technology that does not come from Cisco, Juniper, Huawei, or from whomever. They want to use technology which makes them independent of the vendors. And last but not least, it should certainly be somehow smart. So the whole network virtualization part is about smartness. How to manage the network in an effective and very short way. So that's why the biggest service providers of the world are actually pushing for something that is called NFV. So as you can see, that's why you see a driver's seat there. The service providers worldwide are in the driver's seat to drive for this technology. And I just named a few. This is just an example. So be it BT, be it AT&T or Verizon or whomever, those are the service providers who are pushing for this technology. And as you can assume, those service providers are customers of ours, as well as they are customers of Cisco, they are customers of Arlo, they are customers of Huawei and HP and whomever. So they are pushing all those vendors to enable them to make, or to, let's say, deploy and develop a network that is simple to manage and cost effective. On the other hand, as you can assume, we as the vendors, we certainly don't want to give to our, let's say, biggest customers, which actually generate the biggest revenue and profit for us, something that is completely open and available for a minimum of cost. Because that would actually be an absurdum and put us as vendors out of business. So as you can see, there is a clash of civilizations because we as the vendors want to push for technology, we want to push for new solutions. On the other hand, the service providers are looking at something that is completely open, that leaves them independent from all the vendors around the world. And certainly there is a conflict of interest that somehow has to be managed, because certainly we also want to drive the technology forward, and normally it should be us, the vendors, who drive the technology forward and who are on the developing, let's say, forefront to bring new solutions, but certainly the development costs money. So in terms of Juniper, I can tell you by 5 billion of revenue, more than 1 billion of our yearly revenue is invested into R&D. So this billion of investment needs to come back somehow. We also need to generate some profit, certainly, and we cannot give everything away for free. That's for sure. The same way you will not get for free your internet access at home, as you will not get your smart stream TV at home for free, because the service providers want to charge you for something. So somehow this conflict of interest needs to be managed somehow. So to explain a little bit more what service providers are looking at, they are looking at common off-the-shelf hardware. That's called COTS. And this white-labeled hardware is nothing else than a standard storage, a standard memory, standard processing power. On top of that, there is an open platform or open system, open operating system, which they want to operate. And on top of that, they want to put their own applications. The applications that enables them to actually deliver to customers what they can charge for. And what can service providers today charge for to their subscribers and to their bigger customers, enterprise customers? They can charge for parental advisory control, they can charge for security, they can charge for multimedia programs or streaming, and they can also charge for certain security and quality of service measures, which they actually enable you to use as a customer. And so this is a subscription service that you normally pay on a monthly basis. And those are the applications and the functionalities that the service providers want to put on top of this common off-the-shelf hardware. This is basically what they are looking at. And there are different kinds of initiatives and tests around the world. So if you look at the service provider space, you will see that they are testing different kinds of stuff to see how they can massively decrease their investment and their running costs to actually be able to use this white-labeled hardware. And it's somehow not certainly in our interest, so we have to meet somewhere in the middle, that's for sure. So this is, let's say, the part and the challenges that service providers of today are having. And in the end, what it all relates to, or what it all should move to, is a commoditized network. So a network that is equal, a network that is all the same, more or less, and that you can easily integrate or expand whomever you acquire around the world. So if AT&T is acquiring somewhere, or Deutsche Telekom is acquiring a company in Romania that is a local service provider, or in Hungary or Croatia, they want to have an easy integration into the network. And that's why they're looking at something that is the commoditized network in the end, based on this white-labeled hardware. And that's why you see the push for NFV very simply. So it's not really, let's say, you as the subscribers or enterprise customers who is pushing for that. It's not only us as the vendors who is pushing for that. It's in this case the service provider. On the other hand, you as a customer, not operating on the wide area network, but in your data center, operating the applications that you need to use your network to be productive and to sell something to your customers, you also have challenges, as well as we have, in developing solutions for that. So if you look at the vendor side, what we are actually forcing, or what we are actually trying to improve and move a step further, is the SDN part in comparison to the NFV. So the SDN part is more moved to the data center, and the NFV is more technology that is used in the wide area network. But somehow they are interrelated. And the challenges that you're having today are actually moving the applications around, delivering accessibility to applications, delivering security, and various parts, but all based on applications in the end. And virtualizing all that and managing that in the cloud, in the hybrid public, whichever cloud you're looking at, this is one of the challenges. And currently, the industry's answer to that is simply SDN. This should actually harmonize and simplify the management of the data center challenges that you are facing and that all of us are facing today. So, very simply as a comparison, today to create a virtual machine takes us a few minutes, but to actually adapt the network to certain changes takes us much longer than just simply setting up a virtual machine takes us today. And this is one of the challenges that we are facing. So as you can assume, if you are setting up a new virtual machine and you want to deliver some new application into a network, or you're changing some of the applications, you're moving them from one data center to the other, or you are actually expanding for a third or fourth data center which manages all the redundancy, then you have to adapt the whole network chain. And the whole network chain means that you have a lot of stuff to do on different kinds of routers, switches, firewalls, application controllers or delivery controllers, quality of service and all that stuff, and certainly the security all around it. And in the end, what we can see today is we do have virtual servers. You are able to manage them quite well because VMware and Citrix have developed, and other companies certainly, have developed a framework to manage all those virtual servers and applications quite well. The same is in the storage space. So if you look at EMC and Hitachi or whomever, also they have developed quite a good, let's say, management framework to manage your virtual storage. So even outsource some of your storage to a cloud provider or to develop it or distribute it actually to different data centers. That's what you can see today, and I believe that this part is actually managed quite well. But as we know, the networking part is the complex part. Because what you're having deployments in your network. And what I just mentioned before, there are a few things that you have to change if you are deploying something. So this is one of the challenges in the data center. The second challenge is the capacity that you want to improve or increase or change. And certainly changes all around, concerning from security to whatever quality of service, is certainly something that you are on a daily basis facing when you are managing a data center infrastructure, which is even distributed to maybe cloud providers or different physical data centers that you're owning. So those are the major challenges that we see today, and SDN should be the answer to that. And I'm not saying that SDN today is at the end of the development when you can do all that very simply and easily, because you can't. So whichever vendor you're looking at, the biggest vendors around the world, they don't have the clear answer to the SDN yet. It's all a framework that we are currently developing. There are no real standards that you can rely on, which means that if today you're buying an SDN controller, you just have to make sure that the SDN controller and software, that operating system that is running on it, actually supports as many standards as possible. Standards, because there are no real IETF or IEE or whatever standards actually currently submitted. That's what you have to look at when you're looking into SDN, and you have to be aware that it's not finished yet. And what I said before, so we have the wide area network with all the network function virtualization on one hand, we have the SDN data center part on the other hand, so they need to work together somehow, because as you know, all the cloud infrastructure make it even more complex, especially if you have a hybrid cloud where you operate your own data center and part of your capacity and data is stored somewhere else, then you need to somehow align the SDN and NFV functions. End-to-end is quite a challenge you will never achieve if you don't have this cooperation between the different vendors. That's the most important part that I see at the moment. So this is also, those are also questions that you have to ask if you evaluate to change your network. So, and to break it down in a few of the requirements, you will have the slides anyway, so you can use that if you want in the future to use it as a reference if it helps you. Apart from that, application security is certainly something that we have to look at. So we've been discussing about most of the physical part of the network, but certainly from a virtual perspective, if I look at the applications, there's also something that you need to manage. So it's no surprise that we're offering firewalls on a hardware basis, but certainly what we also are offering is a firewall on a virtual basis. So if you want to protect your VM machines, if you want to protect other parts of a virtual network, if you want to manage your applications that you have virtualized, you need a solution that is actually able to manage that. And that's why certainly we started to develop such kind of a product years ago, and it's already available. It's just something that I actually would suggest to look at if you take a further step to change or expand your network, very simply. And then you can ask a few of the questions that you actually see on the slide. And apart from that, the network management, and now it gets a little bit, let's say, more complex. the network management is certainly something that you care about. So I mentioned our Juno Space. This is the management platform or framework that we are using to manage the whole infrastructure. And apart from, let's say, just managing, meaning the administrative part of configuring it, there are other few things like quality of service, which I mentioned, which is a part that we call the service now, or the security director for the, let's say, the physical part of the firewalls, but certainly also the virtual part of the firewalls and security needs to be managed somehow, and it's part of our framework. It's just, let's say, as a reference for you to understand that we are offering these kinds of technologies in the single framework application. So what it all comes back to is certainly a marketing buzzword that we are using. So for this whole infrastructure, for this whole, let's say, parts of the network and different kinds of switches, routers, and firewalls that we are discussing here today and that I was outlining, we have one single marketing buzzword, which is, in Juniper terms, the meta fabric. So the meta fabric is the big infrastructure that brings it all together. It brings the virtualization together with the physical network and all the management, and it brings together the opportunity to manage different kinds of devices as a single virtual entity. And I believe this is where the future is anyway going. This is where most of the other vendors will also move to be able to manage virtual entities of the network and not only physical devices. And that's pretty much it for today. I don't want to give you the death by PowerPoint, because it's anyway quite dark here, and half of you are probably already asleep. It's either after or before lunch, so my presentation is certainly the one that holds you back or actually accompanies you to have a good sip. Anyway, if there are any questions about the virtual parts of the network, any questions about SDN or NFV, feel free to ask right now, or meet me at the booth, Juniper and RailNet booth outside. And if not, then I just wish you a good day, and thanks for listening and not sleeping. So no questions?
Kérdés esetleg? Úgyse látjuk, de azért próbáljuk meg. I have a question.
Really?
Just one. Okay. So you mentioned the hype cycle, that this topic is on the top of the hype cycle. All the manufacturers have a presentation about SDN.
Certainly they do.
Yeah. But what is the real extension nowadays of SDN? So there are only a few early adopters, or some cloud service providers, for example, use it in a daily operation. So what is your experience?
Well, what I can see is basically that we have a lot of service provider customers, especially in US and also in Asia and also in Europe. What I can see is that those service providers are already using parts of the SDN. Certainly, service providers are the ones that are testing a technology first. So that means that they already used it 2 years ago in their labs to see what can they do with this kind of technology, how can they take it a step further, and what do we have to do in terms of development to actually manage better and deliver something that they actually need on a daily basis to manage and operate their network, and to actually be able to deliver the services to their subscribers which they are paid for. So if you look at AT&T or whichever provider you want to take, or be it Croatian Telecom, those customers are already using these kinds of functionalities, and certainly they are also testing the common off-the-shelf hardware, which I mentioned before. So I can see that some of the customers, they are trying to use the NFV on an open platform, but I can also see that few of them already failed with it, because there are not enough, there's not enough push and development from the vendor side, because certainly we don't want to cut our own leg and our own revenue stream. So yes, service providers and cloud providers mainly are the ones which are using it already. But it will come to the enterprise sooner or later. It's the same with the cloud. I mean, it took us 7, 8 years to establish something, to establish a service on cloud basis that you can just offer by the click going to a portal, and that's it. And the same will be with SDN and NFV. There's no question about it, because industry is pushing for it. So just get accommodated to it.
Thank you very much.